This is a series supposed to be about helpers, mixins, plugins, and custom components. It's some base functionality that is somehow in the view or controller, and but it's not from the beginning in that component. So if, for example, you have a container and you mix in some functionality, or you add a plugin, or you add a custom helper, then you will have additional functionality which is available for many components and not just the single one. Okay, let's dive into it. Today I prepared for you again, we are back here with our view, which we used the last week and the week before. We talked about the mixins in here and how to add publishers. And today I added a container, and this container has a file dropper container reference name. Why is it called file dropper? Because I'm adding my own full screen dropper plugin to it. In that, I defined some things. We're going over that later on, and I added a listener which is somehow working with this full screen dropper, which is listening to file drop. Though this is a container which out of the box doesn't come with file drop. And I added a file field which has a reference, file field ref, and you right out of the box you can see that it's in here. We are passing the name from the reference of the file field to our file field ref to the plugin. And then we have a preview which somehow should be working as a preview. Let's take a look at how it works. Here is our container. Drag your files here. Here is our file field. So I could press here and choose a file from here. And here is, I'm just allowing in here images so that for this one we have an image preview. Let me just drag a file into it. And so you can see I dragged it in here. It shows up here. It gives me the name in my file field line of in my file field. And if I press clear, I'm getting rid of everything. And if I add it again and I say upload, it uploads it. And if I add a couple of files, let me just add several. It says you dropped 3 files, but only a single file is allowed, which is because of my multiple faults. So the last config in here is a drop callback. I want to do something when someone drops a file on it and I name it on drop. And this one, if you remember from last week, is in our controller, but I placed it in my fields mixin for the controller mixin. That's what I talked last week about, that on drop is about fields, and that's why I add all these 3 things in here. Okay, so now, and you see the result down here, file dropper from file field dropped 1 file, component listener from container. So I have several listens in here which are triggered by dropping an item in here. So now let me see how this, let me just refresh this. Okay, now we get a new image down there. Okay, so what is a plugin? A plugin, first of all, is located somewhere in your structure. I place it in app plugin. Typically, if I have several applications or something like that, I put them in a package. But for now, we're going for this plugin. I placed the CSS with it. So CSS is just two different things because I need the drag and drop zone and I need the full screen dropper. So if you take a look in here, you can see that as soon as I'm dragging a file over, we're getting up here, take a look at that, X full screen dropper over. And I'm placing this on the body so that I overlay everything and that the user can see, okay, you can drop it now. And my plugin itself, first of all, comes with tons of information how to use it so that everyone can use it out of the box. Taking this example, for example, or figuring out, okay, how is the enable and disable working for this plugin, how the different listeners are working, and the file field ref, which I talked about earlier. So in here we have a config. Oh, I added a Mixin bindable because I need the disabled to be bindable. And the plugin out of the box doesn't have a binding, so you have to add it on your own. And I added this config. Then here's update disabled, which will be called from the config disabled. You remember most likely that there is a getter, setter, apply, and update. And this one is the update. So on update of disabled, I want to do something. And I'm saying, okay, I have a base CLS, which explains this is a CLS which can be overridden by the user. I'm defining a couple of other things which I need in here. And now we are getting to the important part, which is the init. Once the container gets created, initialized, it will say, dear full screen dropper plugin, run your init, and I'm your host. So out of the box, we will know, okay, component, the me plugin parent, that's how I defined it in here, is the component. For later use inside the plugin, it's useful to know, okay, this is my parent. And then I'm adding to the component the base CLS to ensure that it gets, let me just get in here. And we are right here, X full screen dropper. So that gets is added to my component. And then I'm saying, I do need some listeners on you. You know, if you get hidden or disabled, let me know, because then I have to ensure that we're no longer listening to the document listeners. So the full document is listening to some things. And I say, okay, document on. Now let me get the document listeners, which is drag enter, drag leave, and drop. And all these are added to the doc. And then I need to figure out, okay, do I have a file field ref? And yeah, I need to do some localization. That's about it. So, because I need to know too many files header, too many files text, and so on, I need to get these texts in there. So, but the initial thought is, what is a plugin? So, a plugin is defined as, you can say, on init, do something with the component or whatever you want to do, and have some really, really specified functionality, how you want to extend the component. So there are a couple of components, let's just plugins out of the box. So if you go in here, docs, and we are looking for the API. So now we could go for plugin, for example. And out of the box, usually what you want to extend is this abstract plugin, which gives you a lot of functionality. Other than that, there is a clipboard, mouse enter, and so on, responsive, tab guard. All these plugins can be used on your components. Some of them out of the box are added to tab guard. Sounds like it's added to the tab panel and all these things. So the summary up here is the important part. On init, you want to do something, and on destroy. But why on destroy? Yes. If you initialize your items and you're setting, for example, listeners, and you're destroying the plugin, then the listeners will still be available. And what you want to make sure is that you clear. Most of the time, it's just listeners. But sometimes you might be adding an object to save it somewhere. You want to make sure that whatever you build up, you destroy at the end on your own. It's not part of the plugin to know what you created. That's your own responsibility. So make sure whatever you initialize, let's just see, find, destroy. So I'm removing CLS. It could be that I'm just destroying the plugin and I still do have my container. So I want to ensure that I'm removing the CLS which I added before. On body, you remember that I added this over CLS. It could be that I destroy it while the body shows someone hovers over it. And then I want to remove some things from the component, the binding from the component, and delete some things in here which I build up, and then destroy it. It might be that there is still someone has, for example, the files. If I drag in files and I destroy it, but still there is an indicator to my files, then it can't be destroyed. So I want to make sure that these files get deleted. So that's what I do on destroy. So that's basically about plugins. First of all, I would strongly recommend that you do a documentation like I do in here to ensure whoever wants to use your plugin, if you're not the sole programmer on your project, then everyone should be able to use it. So definitely do some documentation up here, and then you extend it from ext plugin abstract. You add an alias so that you can use this alias in here with a name, and then you want to pass some configs in your plugin so that you are able to use these on initialize. And that's basically it for today. As you can see, I'm having a lot of fun with this, and it's working for me to use a plugin here. I will talk about the helpers, the plugin, the mixin, and the custom component, so that you understand at the end when to use what. But we still have to go with the custom component and then with the wrap-up. And in the wrap-up, I will explain everything to you. So enjoy the day and see you later. Bye.